Hello, my name's Glenn Jacob. I'm the Rockwell Automation Food and Beverage Industry Lead for Australia and New Zealand, and welcome to this session of the Wine Engineers Association 2020 webinar. It's around data-driven operations on the automation theme of the recent publication of wine titles. Also available, there's an article in there called Food for Thought, and there's also an ebook available for download as well. It's referenced, and also there's a link to that ebook at the end of this presentation, so it's available to you as well. This also follows on from the Industry 4.0 theme from last year's Winery Engineers Association event in the Barossa Valley. So it's all about leveraging data that's probably existing in a lot of your automation machines and systems that support our operations today in your winery processing and packaging facilities. And it's about leveraging that data to provide good information so people can make better decisions in their roles to improve whatever their area of interest should be, whether it's quality, line performance, yield, etc. So key concepts: getting the right data to the right person at the right time. I'll just focus in on one sort of use case, because we've only got 15 minutes today, but that use case is around OEE. The OEE metrics also mentioned in this ebook. So we'll expand a little bit on applying some of these principles around the OEE metric, and in particular on a filling line. But won't go into a lot of detail about the OEE metric. Essentially, it's a metric as a percentage, and it's a roll-up of the availability of the line, the performance of the line, and the quality output of the line. And it's widely used. It's a great metric for benchmarking, etc. But where the real value comes in from OEE and an OEE system is when it allows you to understand and gives you insights as to where the losses are on the line, the availability losses, performance losses, and quality losses. And experience tells us that how you apply OEE, how you collect and structure the data, and how you present the information to the various stakeholders greatly affects the results and the value you get from applying OEE. So in the next 12 or so minutes, what I'll do is just touch on a couple of OEE best practices and the concept of smart data for OEE, what to collect, what context to give the data, and how to present it to the stakeholders. Then we'll just wrap up with a quick summary on the value of improving OEE and a couple of key takeouts. So just before I start talking about applying best practices, I'll just talk about a couple of shortcomings we've seen in applying OEE and OEE systems, whether they be some of these refer to manual and some refer to software or automated systems, and some a combination of both. So sometimes systems will calculate the OEE at the end of the line. So basically that might be, so the palletizer, for instance, with full boxes of wine bottles, finished goods going onto a palletizer, and as they shrink wrapped, that's the output of the line that's calculated for OEE. You know theoretically what the line should have produced in that period of time, what it did produce, so you can calculate high-level OEE from that. But it gives you a little insight as to the sub categories that make up OEE, plus what caused the line to perform at that level, quite often below the level you're expecting. So you get no root cause analysis. Another thing, whether it be paper or automated, downtime reasons, when the downtime reasons entering the system are heavily reliant on operators, that means that the operator needs to understand what was the root cause of the stoppage, etc. This is quite often hard to do because there's a lot of moving parts, as you know, in a filling line. So the data is quite often unreliable from really identifying the true cause of root cause analysis, etc. The last one I just want to touch on is quite often OE is calculated on several or every machine on a line. And this is almost a case of too much data. So it makes it very difficult to identify the actual the root causes of what's causing the line performance issues. So all these approaches will give you a system that calculates and reports OEE metric, but where they fall short is it's a poor tool and platform for effective continuous improvement of the line. So just move on and look at some of the 3 best practice key concepts I'd like to just touch on. And this is looking at a filling line, and more often than not, the filler on the line is the constraint of the line. And the first key concept is that the performance of the constraint is the performance of your line. If you have that, quite often it's referred to as a drum, if you have that, the filler, for instance, running at its rated rate for as much of the available time as possible, that's going to be the best performance of the line. So the idea is you keep the filler going, you never starve it, and you never block it. Just keep the filler doing what it needs to do. So that's number 1. The second one I'd like to touch on is the 6 big losses in OEE. So understanding where they are. This is where the real value comes from. So unplanned stop, that's your breakdowns, etc. Planned stops, your changeovers, setups, etc. Maybe your tea breaks, lunch breaks. Then particularly small performance loss, small stops, and the line running slower than it should, quite often aren't captured in an unautomated system, and that's where a lot of the losses can be. Small stops, there might be particularly paper-based. The operator doesn't need to put a reason in if the reason is under, say, 5 minutes, for instance. So you don't capture what the reasons is for all those small stops. And then there's the rejects and the wastage as well that come into the equation. The third concept is what data to capture and what losses to capture. So the data is what you need to make up the OEE metric, and the losses are in 2 major categories: internal losses and external losses. The internal losses are the 6 big losses we talked about in the previous slide, but internal to the constraint or the filler, so all the things that can go wrong with the filler. And then the external losses are the losses external to the filler, so if it's starved, upstream, or blocked by a downstream processor machine. And a best practice is to, from these core elements that you need to capture to get good quality data and insights, capture as much as you can automatically. So Rockwell has a system for providing OEE based on the Factory Talk Innovation Suite powered by PTC. I'm not going into details of the solution, but just more about the philosophy, how we apply the solution to a packaging line and the results we get from the solution. So looking at the actual calculation itself, so from the filler, the system will capture the internal faults and the external, like whether it's blocked or starved. Here's the next bit's where the sort of key point of difference is and real insights come from. We do monitor downstream and upstream machines and log the status, etc. I'm just showing 3 here, running, faulted, stop, for example, but there can be more states than that. But what it does, it only, for example, I'll use the case packer. So the case packer might stop quickly while the operator loads some more cases, etc. But there's generally buffer in the line, etc., that that short stop like that, the case packer won't stop the filler. So you'll log that the case packer stopped, and why it stopped, the system will, but it won't be logged as a root cause of line performance and line OEE. The other key point to make is that we also collect the data with context to the plant model, what product or SKU is running, what production order, process orders running, what shift, etc. So you can really collect, you've got some data, good quality data with a lot of context. You can really slice and dice and drill into root causes and patterns, etc. Now, just shift on to talking about presenting the data. Two main categories I'll put on this one, but the one on the left is more around the production management users, the reliability, continuous improvement community, industrial engineers, etc. And the reports that they can use, and we'll look at each of those in a moment, to identify how the line's running, but more importantly, what are the root causes of the line not running it at its rate, and give them good intel as to where they should focus on continuous improvement to improve the performance of the line. And on the right, it's more a real-time dashboard that just has OEE data, but other data for the operators on a line, like a large heads-up display for the line that helps them as they're running that particular run, information that will help them run the line better. And we'll look at each of these now. Just the first one, the overall, this is pretty typical. It's got the overall OEE roll-up and the three elements that contribute to it under, as you can represent them as dials, as bar graphs shown here. Click through to drill on the detail. So that's at high level. I think that's fairly typical of any OEE solution. Here's what we do. We also provide more of a snapshot of, generally it's a 24-hour period. Sometimes it's called a daily stand-up report, and it'll take key elements of data that's available through different reports, but bring it into almost a one-pager so that you've got key reasons on how the line ran, what issues it had the previous day, what were the top ones by frequency, what were top ones by time, etc., etc. So you hear about the 5 whys of continuous improvement. This probably gives you the first 1, 2, 3 layers of whys in one page, so that you can start to have some efficient, productive conversations with your teams on how we can improve the line going forward. Just finish. Sorry, this is another one, the loss tree report. This is more when you're drilling into the data. The data can come in a few formats. To just go through two quickly here. The one on the left is the with the bar on the line, shows for each state how long it was in that state, how often that state occurred, etc. And it's probably slightly different representation, but in a tabular format with a bit more detail about start and stop times, etc. On the right-hand side. So those first three, particularly the last two, they're very good for the continuous improvement, industrial engineers, etc. We'll just have a quick look at a typical or a mock-up of a heads-up display for the line to help the operators. This just might have some information about what they're running, about how many they're scheduled for this shift, where they're up to in that schedule, how they're tracking to attain the schedule, those sort of things. Also, in the current state, if it's a changeover, for instance, how long have they been in that changeover state? So they've got how long should they be in that? What's the plan to be in that changeover state, etc. So there's a live dashboard that can help them run the line better in the moment, if you will. So that's delivering that's data to different stakeholders in the right format to help them in their job make better decisions and make improvements. So just touch on quickly, the contribution to profit and productivity that increasing OEE has. World class is considered around 85%. We typically see most customers at a starting point that's somewhere around the 50 plus or minus. Generally every 1% increase in OEE has a several $100,000, depending on the dimension, the dynamics of your business, but has a significant improvement to the top line and bottom line of the business. We've seen customers that are at that high 40s get significant improvements pretty quickly by applying this system on their packaging line. So there is a lot of value in improving OEE. So just wrapping up some of the key takeouts. So whether it's the issue you've got is around process, you're trying to optimize the process, or quality, or line performance, exactly as we've talked about here. Think about what problems you need to solve in your business and what the value of fixing those problems are, and focus on the ones that are going to provide you the most value. Leverage the smart data principles that we touched on in this conversation, and then very importantly, present the data and the information in a form that's relative to the stakeholders so they can take action to make improvements. So that's what I wanted to touch on. There's more information in the ebook that I mentioned. The link there below. But thanks for your time today. Hope you found it informative, and hopefully I look forward to catch you in person in 2021. Thank you very much.